It's that time of week. Happy Devil's Wednesday. This is State of the Fan Address, episode 221, titled 2023 Devil's Development Camp. I am your host, Sam Wu, here with pucksandpitchforks.com, editor-in-chief Nick Villano. Streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter Live, and Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network. Coming to you live from the Primetime Radio Studios in North and South Jersey, or as what we call it, Taylor Ham Country and, I don't know, Pork Roll Country? Is that what you guys call it? Scrapple Country is what they call it? I don't know. But we got a great podcast for you tonight. What's up, Nick? How's everything going?
Oh, we're busy here.
Yeah?
It's been wild and crazy, man.
How's the father life going?
It's good, Listen, it is time consuming, that I'll say. Definitely, my lovely wife is at Beyonce tonight.
Oh, okay.
So my mom is helping so I can do the podcast. But yeah, we're a little late because the boy just didn't want to chill. He had no chill in his soul right now.
No Gato and chill?
No, we gave him plenty of Gato. He's got definitely plenty of Gato or whatever the equivalent is for a baby. No chill.
Oh.
None whatsoever.
Oh.
But that's okay. He's a good baby.
If you ever need me to babysit one day, you and your wife go out. I have experience. I have the tools.
You're going to drive 2 hours to babysit my kid?
Hey, it's not hard babysitting.
I didn't think it's hard. It's just that drive is hard.
Oh, no. The drive is fine. Matter of fact, I had to take your kid, put him in the back in the booster seat, and I'll go for a 3-hour drive. Kid would fall asleep. I think by the time you come home.
Sam, you don't put kids in booster seats in cars, right?
You don't? I thought you do.
The child is an infant. You do not put them in a booster seat.
Well, then what do you do then?
There's car seats that, booster seats is like what you put them in the restaurant, or like what a full blown.
I thought they were called booster
8-year-old
seats.
sits in. No, they're car seats.
Oh,
they're right. Booster seat is what like an 8 or a 10-year-old is.
Oh,
it's like that's the last line of defense before they're just full blown sitting in a seat.
Yeah. You know what? How about let's forget that thought and I was just trying to make trying to make conversation. That's all.
Speaking of the children moving on, Jesper Boquist signing with the Boston Bruins today.
Mm-hmm.
Are you upset at this at all? I'm not gonna lie to you, Sam. No offense to the guy, but I felt nothing about this.
I'm just still mystified why the Penguins and Bruins want our leftovers.
To be fair, the Penguins probably said that about us like 6 or 7 times during the Ray Shero era, and also during.
But that's understandable because there's a connection there.
Yeah, well,
what's the connection?
But there's a connection back. They know how Tom Fitzgerald thinks, so they're like, oh, they drafted him for a reason. I actually think Shero drafted Boquist, but same difference, And again, it's Boston and New Jersey have long. Here's probably what the simplest answer is. Boston and New Jersey have long had a relationship where they've made trades, and that probably leads to Boston and the Devils always having scouts at their games, and you kind of fall in love with guys, or you see something that the guy's not doing that you think you could teach that guy. They spent, I bet you, a lot of time really focusing on Zacha, because Zacha always felt like a guy who made a lot of sense in Boston, and obviously he's there and he's playing better now than he was with New Jersey, and I bet you Boston's had that same conversation. I bet you that conversation with a lot of guys that they think could theoretically become available. Think about it, Sam. They have like 20 people employed by the team just to draft 7 guys a year at most. Think about it if you're the European scout and you spent your entire year like say you're Ottawa scout, focusing on all these European players being taken in the top 10, and then they trade their 7th overall pick for DeBrincat. Well, you just did your entire year's work was for nothing. You know what I mean? So and I know that they do more. They focus on more than just the top guys. But my point stands is that they have a lot of scouts, and they go to every team. At some point, they see every team, and they send assessments on the guys they think could be available. Like, I don't think that they're assessing Jack Hughes for his availability, but they're assessing the bottom of the roster guys, the McLeods, the Bastions, the Boquists, the Hollas, especially guys that are going to be free agents. Maybe not Holla because he was on Boston, but you get the point. Teams are going there. They're assessing these players, and, maybe they think also that, like, the Devils' play style and what Boston wants to play under Jim Rutherford. Is it Jim Rutherford? Is that who's coaching Boston? I'm sorry, I just had baby
Jim
brain.
Montgomery.
Thank you, man. What they want to play under Jim Montgomery, it makes sense in a vacuum. You know what I mean? Like and I think that's also why you see a lot of teams go after players from in their division because you see them so much. You see how they play. And
I also think it's intelligence as well, meaning what the other team's doing.
Maybe, yeah. I think that's part of it for someone. Yeah, I don't think that's what the Bruins are doing, though, because the only time it would really matter is in the Eastern Conference Final. So I don't think that they're thinking that far ahead. But Boquist is in Boston. That's again, the Devils haven't been doing much. It's speculation season for sure. Like, still talking about goalies and whether the Devils are a fit for one of the superstars. Still talking about, is this it? Are they done adding? There's word that they're, are they in on Tarasenko? Are they not in on Tarasenko? Are they in on, there's a couple other guys, like lesser guys that are out there that maybe they're in, maybe they're out. Listen, I'm going to be honest, Sam. I think it's if they were going to sign one of these forwards, I think it would have happened already.
Yeah.
I think they're going to go forth with giving Holtz a chance. Foote is on the team, if you ask me. Nolan Foote is the fourth line. He's going to replace Miles Wood. I think that's just a done deal. So you got one spot open, and it's not having Curtis Lazar in the opening night roster. Assuming that Curtis Lazar is your extra forward, you have one roster spot open. And I think they really want to see if Holtz can take it. And here's the thing, and this is the thing I've pointed out multiple times, Sam. They used to really like Tice Thompson, and the Fitzgerald regime liked Tice Thompson. And his injuries have kind of ruined him for the most part, but if they don't do it this year, they're going to lose him. He is no longer waiver exempt. So he's going to go on waivers, and I think somebody's going to claim him.
Yeah.
The brother of a super duper star, a guy who was super successful in college, showed glimpses, but just never could put it together. I think he's getting claimed.
Yeah.
Like an Arizona or like a San Jose, like what do they have to lose?
Sorry, I'm just sending you a text, Nick.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go. I'm just wasting time until.
I was trying to break in. I didn't know how to do it. A good friend of the
shut up.
A good friend of the podcast right now is in the Travis Green room. His name is Josh Youngren, founder of Evolving Wild. You can find him on Twitter at Evolving Wild. Josh, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Oh, we're doing wonderful. It's always we always have you on around this time, Josh, and it's our favorite time. We either have you right before free agency. Sorry, I'm cutting you off. See, this I don't know if you know, but I had a baby. Well, I didn't have anything. My wife had a baby like 2 months ago. I haven't slept since.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I feel like I'm more boisterous, which means that I talk more. So I apologize if I ever cut you off. But no,
I have
listen.
I have no way of relating to someone who talks too much. I don't talk too much at all in any way, which is a complete lie. I'm joking. Yeah, but sorry, it's totally fine. I will not take offense.
That's good. That's good. Sam, I cut Sam off all the time, so he's used to it. But yeah, we always bring you on around free agency. We usually try to bring you on before, but this year was just a little different. The Devils didn't really have that free agency money, right? And they made the deals early, right? Like it didn't. I'm sure it didn't. You weren't really circling the Devils for anybody, right?
No, I mean, I guess we'll get to it. The only one I'm a little bit checked out, Luke and I. So for people who don't know, although I've been on, I think enough that maybe some people have seen me already, but
hopefully
I run our Evolving Hockey with my brother, and we've kind of checked out the last week or two. We've had to force ourselves to take a bit of a break. So maybe I've missed some news around the Devils, but I'm a little surprised. Like I not surprised. I thought Tatar might be a good player for the Devils to bring back. I think I said it in our preview on the site, and I'm kind of curious because he's still, I believe, unsigned unless I missed something. So that's the only one.
He's still out there.
Yeah, and I was because I think we still project Tatar as a pretty good value add for any team. But yeah, the Devils. I was looking into it. I think what was it on July 1st? They added, was it McLeod and Bastian? I think were those the two.
And then they traded for Colin Miller. So they made a trade, one of the few trades on July 1st. But again, that's a depth defenseman move. It's nothing crazy, just kind of little pieces here and there.
No, and I think that so they signed Severson, and then they signed Meyer and Bratt, right? Which are, I think was expected. I mean, we can get into that a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, the Devils have, and their offseason's been pretty quiet. And I, having done a pretty big deep dive into this free agency class like we do every year, it does not surprise me that that certain teams are choosing not to really partake in free agency. I just think this is, and we've talked about this before. When I say we, I mean on our podcast and just kind of in general, people have seen us on Twitter. But this, I mean, I don't remember a free agency class that's been as weak as this one. So it's kind of like, not really. I think was it back in maybe 2010, or it was I don't know, over 10 years ago, I feel like. So it seems like a pretty wise move for some teams just to say, we're not going to be signing UFAs this summer. We're going to wait. We're going to see, maybe go through trades or whatever. But sorry, I'm rambling, as I said I might do.
No, absolutely. Listen, the one that it reminds me of is there was one year where a bunch of really bad guys got big contracts, like Kyle Okposo and Louis Eriksson and a lot of these guys got $6 million contracts. Yeah. That was the year. I don't remember what year that was, but I guess it was 6 years ago, right? Because Okposo's contract just finally ended.
That sounds right. Yeah. I don't know. It kind of all blurs together. We've also been doing, so on the site, if people aren't aware, we do contract projections. So we project NHL salaries, and we've been doing it
very well, by the way. You do it very well.
Thank you. Although this year it's I think, I'm not trying to, if you're interested, go check them out. We would love for, you consider subscribing. But this year there's been some, the model I think is doing the worst it's ever done, even though it's still pretty good. It's there's definitely been some, I think some outlier contracts that are causing some things to go a little bit off more. It's kind of if you just remove a couple of for instance, the Villano and Perry contracts, then it's right in line. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of those that are so out of line, out of left field with no real precedent for them that it's you can't really say that it's the model's fault. But yes, so every year we do sorry, there is a bird of prey out my window attacking something. No. Sorry, it threw me off a little bit. But yes, so we do a pretty big deep dive into the free agency class with our contract projections, and also with our player projections as well, and kind of looking at where teams can add value from. And when I did it this year, it was just really surprising the lack of especially UFAs. Obviously, the RFA market was pretty strong. I mean, but a lot of them signed early. I mean, we already saw the Devils got the Meyer and Bratt were already signed, and Severson signed, and there's just not a lot of there's just the UFA is I think on the top right now is basically Patrick Kane, Tarasenko, and Bergeron, who I don't even know if Bergeron, if there's any real news about what Bergeron's doing, but he likely, if he did even come back, would take kind of a similar deal probably to what he took last year. So yeah, it's been an interesting offseason. There hasn't been a lot going on. After the first day, there were 120 contracts signed, and then there's been a handful of league minimums signed every day since, I think. And there's still some rumors out about Tarasenko and some of the other big names, but yeah, it's been an interesting offseason. I think we haven't had an offseason like this in a while, so I think it it makes room or makes way for some, I guess maybe some frugal thoughts to maybe start to creep into teams about what they can do and where they can add value, maybe on their depth in general.
And it's funny you say that's been quiet, because I went like hard in the paint from the time the kid was born up until July 1st, where I was like, I am going to do this full fledged. I'm not going to let being a father. So July 1st happened, and then like nothing really happened, and I was like, I'm gonna just take a break. Like there was just like nothing going on. I did the same thing that your brother did. Let me just take a step back. But I do want to talk about the Bratt and the Meyer contract, because those are the big ones. Those are the big wins. If you ask Devils fans, what were your assessments? Just to remind you, Bratt, they both signed max term 8 years. Bratt signed for 7.875, I think is the number, and then Meyer signed for 8.8, something like that. I think
that's right.
What was your thoughts? How close was it to the model? Like where were you on this?
Yeah, so on both of those, we had they were pretty close. They essentially evened out in terms of like being like in how we project. So there's a couple of things I'll just say up front is that we on the site we project both term, the most likely length of the contract, which we call term, and then also the corresponding cap hit per year for that term. And so there's a couple things, because there's the way it works is there's like essentially 8 different contracts that a player could sign. And so at each different year length, there's a specific dollar amount that's tied to that per year. And so for Meyer, we actually predicted that he would sign an 8-year deal. And I believe our model was somewhere about 8.4 million per year. And so it was it was about like 400,000 over per year than what the model projected. But Meyer and then Bratt, we actually projected he would sign kind of more like the Matthews type deal, because that's kind of what the model has picked up on a little bit, is more of like the 5-year term was a little bit more likely for Bratt, but the 8-year term was also pretty close. So they were kind of comparable. And Bratt actually we had signed, I think it was about 300,000 under what we projected. So sorry, that's a lot of words to basically say that Meyer we were a little bit lower on from the projection, contract projection, and Bratt the model thought would get a little bit more. So they kind of cancel each other out. I mean, Bratt and Meyer are probably, I think by our goals above replacement projections for the Devils heading into next season are, I want to say the second and fourth most valuable players on the Devils right now. And so number 1 being Jack Hughes, and I think 3 is Tischer, I think. So those are like essentially the Devils locked up their like probably 2 of their 4 or 5 most important pieces, I would say, going forward to what they needed to do. They were right in line with what you would expect, and they didn't get, it wasn't like a crazy overpay. Both players are going to be, we expect to be very good. So I think the assessment is like they kind of are right in line. I mean, it's a very kind of standard RFA deal for a high end player, that there weren't any, we didn't have any like sign and trades. Like the Devils clearly were aware that they wanted to and needed to sign those players, and that was kind of their intention. They made room for it. I mean, they did what they had to do. So I guess the assessment is both players are really good. I think it's really good that the Devils kept them. I think they, basically they didn't save a ton of money, but they also didn't overpay like crazy. And so I think that it's, I think it's a really good, it's a good thing the Devils probably, I think most Devils fans, I'm assuming, kind of just expected was going to happen. And then it did. I don't know if maybe with Meyer, if there were thoughts of potentially trading, but it seemed like they were pretty all in on Meyer after they got him. So, I mean, I think in general, I think especially getting Bratt long-term is especially with and we can get into this more, but I think one of the things with this summer is the kind of the rumors around the rise in the salary cap over the next couple of years, which is causing a lot of things to maybe get a little wonky. So I think the Devils getting Bratt a little bit cheaper than maybe was expected at 8 years is actually pretty good for them long term, because if the salary cap does, for instance, go up in like 5 or 6 million in the next couple of years, or I think whatever it's been rumored that if Bratt did take a shorter deal, then they're probably going to end up having to pay him more down the line if they want to keep him at his UFA season. So I think in general it was a really good business for the Devils.
Let me ask a quick question just about the model and kind of how it works. Is it just a clear, like, does it focus only on analytics and precedents, or does it take some like with the Bratt deal, like Bratt has been through 2 hard negotiations. Like, does it take anything like that into account? Is there any like human element to it, or is it just straight precedents and analytics?
So it is, I would say it's a little bit more kind of on the just historical contracts and the kind of corresponding box score stuff. There are a lot of things that kind of work into it, but for the most part, GMs are very consistent in how they pay players. At least they have been, and so the model can pick up on a lot of signal when it comes to pretty standard stuff that is kind of taken together in the way that it interacts. So the big ones are just time on ice, points, games played. There's some smaller things like, an assist, and, like we have kind of a couple, we kind of use something like Dom Lucian's game score also as a metric that kind of takes into account how GMs tend to value players in a contract negotiation standpoint. But it also does take into account like the player's age, and then their position and their status, and then also their previous contract. And so depending on what, like, I think what Brett signed, it was just a 1-year deal, right? Or what am I thinking?
Yeah,
maybe
last year.
Yeah. So the model does have that information about what the player's most recent contract is, which does have a pretty big impact on, or can have a big impact on what we might expect that player to take. So my guess is that it probably saw that he had a shorter deal before and thought that he might want to take a shorter deal, kind of like what we call it, like I've been saying this, the Matthews deal or the Robertson deal was for a while that younger players were taking basically not full term or full 8 years. They were going to basically taking a 4 or 5 year deal around their 24-25 season to take them to kind of UFA years so they could maybe get another contract in the UFA market. But in terms of like human element or like narrative stuff, or like even, what the media says about, a player in the playoffs, that kind of stuff, it doesn't really have the ability to take that into account in any kind of way. We've looked at some different things, but for the most part, it just kind of takes the general like box score and player numbers and also just their age and position and status, and then also some of the prior contract information as well. There's a lot of other things too, but I would say it leans more towards the just pure kind of analytics and history of or historical contracts than any kind of human element, I guess.
Listen, I've been told by so many people that players are going to get contracts because they quote unquote got that dog in them. So I'm assuming that has to go into the model, right? Is there a dog column?
Yeah, if we could properly measure dog, it would definitely be going into the model, but it's not. I think it's more of a nebulous metric, right?
So let me ask you, you got through free agency. I know you kind of at least glance at the deals that are out there and kind of how they compare to the models. So based on that, let's go with the really, really good and the really, really bad. Who do you think signed the best contract of free agency, and who signed the worst one?
Yeah, so for the best, I looked into this a little bit, and we do. I think especially on the first day or two, because of the number of contracts that are signed, we're pretty. It's a pretty fun now, kind of almost tradition of ours to just like be around all day on free agency, constantly looking at cap friendly and our projections, just to kind of see who's coming in where. It's a fun endeavor, I think, for us to kind of follow what we projected versus what's actually happening real time, which we don't get a lot of opportunity to like see that hard of a comparison between the predicted and actual values in anything else we do. So it's like a fun, like, okay, well, here's the model. We think it's pretty good. Let's see what actually happened. Right. But the best contract, just compared to our projections versus what actually signed or was actually signed, I think the Evan Rodriguez deal with Florida was it was the biggest difference on the low end. So the most like underpaid compared to what we projected. So in a technical term, you might say that was maybe the best one. I think there were a couple other ones that were signed that I think from a best standpoint for us, I mean, if I'm going just purely based on what we generally project, the best ones are the ones that are the closest to what our projections were, which tend to be my favorite because it's like, so the DeBrincat's new contract actually was about within $100,000, and usually on the high end contracts, there's a lot more variance in outcomes just because there aren't as many of those. It's a lot easier, quote unquote, to project like $1.5 million contracts for players because those contracts get signed a lot. But contracts over, say, I think we also work kind of more in salary cap percentage for cap hit as opposed to the raw cap hit, but usually cap percentage that's over about 3 or 5%. Those contracts are pretty rare. So when those ones are signed and they're in line, I'm always pretty happy. I think last year we were really close, I think, on the Forsberg deal. So I really like those ones, just like our model's good. But I think my least favorite, I kind of already mentioned this, were the Nick Villano and Corey Perry deals that Blackhawks signed, which are very unprecedented. They signed 1 year, $4 million deals. I believe that we projected one by 900,000 deals for both of them. And so when both of those come in, it tends to really tank the model evaluation, or like our what we kind of say is like, oh, here's how you evaluate the model. So those ones, I think there were a couple weird ones that I think is just more of they're not like a least favorite. It's more of ones I find interesting because they're more of a sign of the times of what's going on with the salary cap. But the Orlov deal with the Canes was a really, really high cap hit for a 2-year deal for a defenseman like that I don't think we've seen a contract, or at least the model doesn't, or is telling us that a contract like that hasn't been signed. There are some clear reasons why the Canes signed that contract and why Orlov took it as well. That one was really out of left field. I think there were a couple other ones that were, I think it's kind of funny. So in our preview, we talked about, we do, like I mentioned, a comparison between our contract projections and then like our player projections. So what we expect these players to put up in like a raw value. And that's more of not like just points, but also like it's defense. It's everything that kind of we try to take into account about on ice play. And our number one most valuable player based on the comparison was Pierre Engvall. But that essentially projected him as signing like a 2 or 3 year deal as a depth forward. And then Islanders signed him to like, what was it, a 7-year deal by like $3 million. And so those are kind of, those ones are also really weird. You don't see those. I mean, we've seen them more and more, I think, the last couple of years, but still the Engvall deal is also another one that I'm like, I mean, I like Engvall, don't get me wrong. Like, I think he's a great like depth forward. And I think our stuff has actually always kind of liked him as a defensive forward, but it's a really long time to commit to a player like that. So like those are more interesting ones that kind of, I like that we have them now, because then the model has more information, or when we're training the model in the future, we have more information to kind of like that it can draw from and say like maybe there's some other players who might take those kind of deals. So yeah, I'm trying to think. It's pretty much it. There were a few other weird ones. Like I think actually the Jari contract with Pittsburgh, a lot of people thought that was a pretty like overpay or something, but our models have actually really kind of liked Jari a little bit, and I think project him to be, and actually his contract projection was I think like $1.5 million more per year or something like that. And so I actually think that's a pretty, it's a good contract for the Penguins to sign, I think, because I think Jari is a really solid goaltender. But it also gets kind of more into the idea of, are we evaluating contracts based on just what the market says they should get, or like what the team situation is? Because Pittsburgh is kind of in a weird space where they still have Crosby and Malkin and Letang, and they're really old, and they, like they're signing a good goaltender, but also I don't know how competitive they're going to be in that case. So like maybe, so that's a whole other thing that I'm not really getting into, but I think those are kind of the general contracts that stick out to me right now off the top of my head.
Yeah. And all those make sense. The Jari contract, it's the same thing. You said you were confused or a little surprised that Tatar is still out there, and the same thing with Jari. It is narrative, right? And it's Jari is the narrative around him is that he's an injury prone guy, and he's left the Penguins out to dry a couple times. But they also signed, they have Casey DeSmith and another backup. I forget the other backup, but they have 3 NHL goalies to make up for it. So, they took the high upside with Jari, and they have Crosby. They want to win now. They don't want to start over with another goalie like that. That would put them in a bad position. So it makes sense. I was going to ask: is there a place in your algorithm to put like how old the GM is? Because I'm sure that has to do with like how far away are you from retirement / getting fired? Because you don't care about 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 year deals if your job is or you're close to not having that job anymore.
We have, I mean, there are a lot of things that you could theoretically include like that. I don't think that it's the thing that's actually, if I'm getting technical here or like getting into the weeds, it's very difficult to have a historical context or like a tracking system that shows every GM and the contracts they sign. That's not kind of how, like, for instance, Cap Friendly works, which is like our, the data we use, which shout out Cap Friendly. They're, as everyone knows, just like the best site online. I mean, like the absolute best hockey site. But they track by team. They don't track by GM. So it's actually, there have been some work, I think, in some of the analytics conferences that we've been to, like Rochester, the Rochester Analytics Conference, which hasn't happened in a couple of years, but I can't remember who did it, but like of trying to actually line up contracts signed by GMs. because it's not always the easiest thing. And so I think that's one thing that's limiting, is that we just don't have really the data to track that. But we have like tried to look into, for instance, players signing in Florida versus like Toronto, right? And like the impact that might have on the actual dollar value because of the difference in taxes and, the difference, we also looked into like how much available cap space does a team have to like, are they trying to get a ton of value from certain contracts, or do they have kind of some money to spend? Which, if we had figured that out, I don't think that we would have been as far off on the Perry and Villano deals going to Chicago. So like, there's, it's hard to, I think, account for everything, but there are some things that would be fun to be able to at least look into to see the impact on contract value, but we just can't do it.
It's fair. Yeah, I mean, there are too many factors. You do yeoman's work just getting to where you get to and getting so close in so many deals. I can't shout out evolving-hockey.com enough. If you're not subscribed to there, you're doing yourself a disservice. All of your free time will be wasted on the site. There's just so many little different tree branches and avenues that you could just get lost in and not do your work and make sure that you're, wasting the boss's time and spending their money. Well, go subscribe to Evolving-Hockey. Make sure you do that. Before I let you go, Josh, I have to bring it back to the Devils real quick. If you're building this team, you're seeing how they built this team. You see they still play. You see the contracts they have. Now you look at it and you're a true contender, and you've seen what true contenders have done. I believe your team is Minnesota, right?
That is true. Yes.
Yeah. For now, until we recruit you full time. Yeah. By the way, is that goalie available? But neither.
I know.
But let's talk. I mean, the Devils theoretically are one piece away in everybody else's mind, and a lot of people have said Hellebuyck. They've brought up Swayman. They brought up a couple other goalies that could be available. Is that your assessment? Do you think that the Devils should try to finally get that last piece, or do you think they should try to win like Colorado and Vegas did, or do you think they should just sit back and let the young kids try to take those positions? Like, what is your assessment? Do you think that they could be the Canes?
Yeah, so I think that I should say, first of all, that we have been the last, and I think we've talked about this before, is that our stuff has been very high on the Devils. And I think that in the first round this year, like when we did our playoff predictions, our projection for the Devils was so much higher in terms of their first round win percentage than any other model. And they won, which was very, very good for us in terms of our model evaluation, right? But so we're a little biased, I think, because our models, and this isn't out of any personal bias, we're not, twisting knobs to make the Devils look good. Maybe some Devils, maybe some, yeah, we could. So I should say, first of all, I'm a little biased because our stuff really likes the Devils. But I think just looking at where the Devils are right now, like, I think they basically just have the same strong team they did last year, except with a little bit maybe more like of that playoff experience going into next year. I think that the one thing is that a big question mark is kind of Vanacek. And I think just like what the goal, like you kind of already mentioned, we like Vanacek. I think that we said heading to last season that he was, I thought he was going to be good. And in the regular season, he was quite good for the Devils. I think the playoffs were a little bit different, and there were some different things. I think there was some injury stuff too, if I remember correctly. Or maybe
I think it was just a general. He had never played that many games before, and there's always things that come with that. And so that was the general consensus.
Yeah, I think the Devils are returning with a really strong team, and a few of their younger players are really kind of coming into their prime this year. I mean, they were, Hughes and Bratt are getting a year older with more experience, and we're kind of seeing them kind of reaching their potential peaks here. And then I think just like the overall team construction isn't all that different from last year. I think against the Canes, I think the thing we always say is like, well, it's just like, it's just one series, right? It's just a couple games. If you think about it in the regular season, like teams go through up and downs of, 6, 7, 8 games or whatever. And if that just happens to just be bad luck during the playoffs, right? Well, are you happy with how the team played, or is there an actual thing that's a problem? I think the narrative around the Hurricanes was that they couldn't score, right? And they ended up just being able to score, and they had obviously some kind of ridiculous, or not, I shouldn't say ridiculous, but they got good goaltending. And I think it was just a little bit of like kind of, I don't want to say it was all bad luck, but I also would be skeptical of changing the Devils' construction too much to the point that you alter what they had last year. Because I think especially people saw it in flashes during the regular season, and also in the playoffs when they, were playing really well, that Devil team is a really good team. And I think they're probably, by our stuff, going to be, I don't know if I want to. They're definitely going to be like a top 5 team out of the East. They might even be like a top 3 team, I think, by our stuff, just because of how strong a lot of their players are, that at least from our metrics. So I'm almost on more of the side, like you just kind of like just run it back, like I wouldn't like this free agency class you're not getting anything anyway. So I think Swayman is an interesting option. I mean, I've been wondering if we're going to see some offer sheets, like if Gustafson like Gustafson in Minnesota is actually, I think, a prime target, just given the Wild's cap space situation right now. And I'm not saying like I'm a Wild fan, kind of. I mean, like still, like I've lost a little bit of that fandom once you kind of do what we do a little bit, and you're kind of talking about covering every team, but. I mean, maybe there are some RFA targets that the Devils could potentially go after, but like, do you think that they're more? Are they going to be more? I should say, do you expect them to be better than what the Devils have right now? Because Gustafson kind of came out of nowhere last year, right? So did Swayman a little bit. So like, it's just as likely potentially that they're going to maybe kind of falter if they go to a new system or a new team, especially being young goalies. So I don't know. I mean, I don't really have a problem with the Devils have right now. And I really like I mentioned, our stuff likes Vanacek, and I think their team construction overall, maybe they could kind of add another depth piece, I guess. But I don't know. I guess my answer to you is I like this Devils team, and I wouldn't really try to do too much differently.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at. Like, there's a couple weird ones. Like, I think Spencer Knight would be an interesting pick just because of he just has a lot of there's a lot of grossness around him, and Florida signed another backup goalie. And, people were mad he went to the Kentucky Derby. Like, just a lot of weird stuff. And, like, obviously he was in the, the NHL program. And, like, I don't even want to get into that. But, there's some relationship building that he would have to do in Florida that he wouldn't have to do in New Jersey. And he's an extremely incredible talent. And he's on the age, he's in the age range. Well, Hellebuyck is 30. And we see what happens to 30-year-old goalies. Going to be 31 next season. I'm not giving $9 million to that. I'm not taking John Gibson, who knows whether he's actually bad like he looks, or if he's bad because his defense is bad and the team just has given him nothing to care about. And can he care again, even if he's still good? Can he care again after not caring for as long as he had? There's a lot going on. But again, I think if you're actually talking about this, you're either talking about a rental for Hellebuyck, which it is what it is. I would take him for 1 year, but I don't want to tie myself to him, because you're tying too much. If you give him $9 million, like, that could force you to have to make a hard decision on one of these other $8 million contracts that you have later on. And then, I don't want any part of that. Or you're talking about a Swayman, a Spencer Knight, Askarov was apparently available, but I don't think the Devils have the kind of pieces that Nashville is looking for that. Like, those are the pieces that I'm looking for. Like Gustafson, things like that. Because I think it was Gustaf 24.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's right.
So that's where I'm looking. Or just keep Schmid and Vanacek, and you got Nico Dawes in the AHL. You got Tyler Brennan. You got a couple really good players that can turn into something. Can turn into AHL goalies. I think that's the point. But Josh, I really. Yeah. Oh no, you go first.
Oh, I was going to just to add to that. I think one thing that we've seen with aging curves, but also just general like year-over-year trends with goalies, is once goalies get past, especially past like 35, but into their 30s, there's a lot of unpredictability. It's a very unpredictable position in terms of goalies, and I'm kind of right there with you. I think that Hellebuyck as a rental would be kind of an interesting idea for the Devils. Like, he's going to get a big deal because he's still really good, and you don't really want to be a part of that deal, I think, if you're the Devils. I just think that, like, basically the real question comes down to is an available younger goalie better or maybe more predictable than Vanacek is next year? And I think that's the thing the Devils kind of have to figure out is he going to be the number one next year, or is there going to be some, and I don't know. I'm not really sure. He was very good last year during the regular season when he played. And so it's a tough question, I think, for the Devils, but I like where they're at. So,
yeah, I agree. I think we're fine. The Devils are fine, and Josh Youngren is fine. Evolving Wild is doing fine. Evolving Hockey is doing fantastic. Again, I cannot say enough how much we love your site, how much we adore everything you do. So whoever's listening out there, make sure you go get a subscription to Evolving Wild. But I want to give Josh. You're the man. You're the guy who has it all. Promote your site, promote the podcast, promote everything you and your brother and the team are doing this this off season?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the kind words. We just you check out evolving-hockey.com. You can look at the you can take a look at the subscription options and just add a /subscribe or click on the subscribe. We offer a lot of stuff. You already kind of went through the promo, so I won't do it too much. But we've got a lot of different player projections.
Promote your work. You're killing it.
Yeah. A lot of there's just a lot of options for contract stuff. You also get kind of game by, if you want to go look at like player game sheets and like their game by game numbers, it's available. We also do fantasy projections, which should be out sometime in August, probably later August, which will be out again this year. There's a lot of stuff. We also have a podcast just called the Evolving Hockey Podcast. If you're interested, that I do with my brother Luke, and then our kind of co-host Sean Ferris as well, who we all go way back from our old Hockey Graphs days when we were bloggers way back when. So, that's pretty much it. We have a couple things kind of, I think maybe planned, but I think right now we're kind of trying to unwind a little bit so that we can get that motivation back when we have to get a lot of stuff ready for the season again. So we're kind of in a bit of our midsummer break, if you will. So, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, Josh, we really appreciate you coming on. You've given us incredible insight. It was really fun talking to you about free agency, the contracts, what the Devils did, Brad and Meyer. I appreciate you coming on and bringing some of your knowledge, and we'll definitely have you on again soon.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks again, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Josh. That is Josh Youngren of Evolving Wild. You can find him on Twitter at Evolving Wild. Nick, you keep on asking the same questions over and over and over again. I'm just
kidding.
What do you mean? I'm kidding. I'm making a flyer.
I am very interested in the processes that they use. I'm very interested. And I think our fans are too. Like I want to know if an 80-year-old Lou Lamoriello is part of the algorithm. I want to know if Jesper Bratt being kind of a jerk for 2 years is part of the algorithm. Where's the jerk factor?
It's called beef.
Where's the beef? Is there a beef factor? Is there a weight by contract demand?
It's a beefalytics. I'm telling you, it's the new trend.
No, I mean I love everything that Josh does. And Sam, I promote a lot when people come on here.
Of course.
But it's not because I'm promoting things I don't care. Like Sam, you know this. I go and I ask these people to come on the podcast because I believe in what they say. There's a lot of people who are big in the hockey world who I don't ask to come on because I have no interest. I have no interest in what they
who could that be?
What they do. It doesn't matter.
I'm kidding.
It doesn't matter. I'm not gonna
put you on the spot. I'm not gonna ask softball questions.
I am in no way gonna make this podcast an enemy of anybody. But I also if I don't believe in what you do, I'm not gonna ask you to come on my show just because you're a big name or you're gaining ground or there's a reason why I ask the people who I ask, and it's because I believe in their work. And I'm sure I got a little bit of flack for the athletic people, but I really I trust in as somebody who was the day-to-day grinder journalist for a long time in my career, for some companies that people do not like. I worked for some companies people like, but I've also worked for some companies. I worked for Sinclair Broadcasting. That company has been considered evil. And you're a day-to-day grinder. So when I bring people from The Athletic on, it's because the people at The Athletic are killing it. They're doing such great work, which is why it's so flabbergasting about some of the things that have happened there. So, the reason why I have people come on and I talk so highly of their work is because I feel so highly about their work. Evolving Wild is somebody who I've been in talks with Evolving Wild almost my entire career at Pucks and Pitchforks, which runs 6 years. I've always loved their work. For the longest time, they kind of wanted to keep their identities a secret, so we never really could find the right project. And then Josh and his brother Luke decided that is not a necessity anymore. And I think it started when we had Micah on. You loved when we had Micah on. I need to reach out to him again. But
hockey math guy.
Yeah, I mean, and he's just always so busy. I always feel bad. I feel like. Not that everybody is who I reach out. Everybody is gracious with their time. I don't want to act but again, I'm talking in circles, Sam. I'm baby tired again. This is what happens. This is not good podcast content. But anyway, the point is that I bring these people on because I trust their work. I believe in their work, and I think that they're just such high quality. And evolving hockey is so high on my list at all times. And I think people care about those processes. That's why I bring him on. I bring him on. I don't want him to come on and reveal all the contracts because I want people to go on there and kind of check out his work and get their money's worth. But I also, I want to know, like, what was the process that went into that? Like, let me jump into that brain and that, and what do you use? Like, they get it right every year, Sam. Of course you're not going to get Corey Perry's contract right. Like, who knew that Chicago's going to come off the top rope with some stupid contract? And, like, Foligno, he got traded there, right? So who knew that Chicago was going to trade for Foligno and give him a stupid contract? Like, that contract is dumb. Like, you can't attribute for things like that, but when you get the Bratt contract, what do you say, $300,000, and the Meyer contract within $400,000, and you're getting that close on that 8-year deal, killing the game, Sam.
Wow. I'm sure Tom Fitzgerald, I bet you he goes through Evolving Wild. I'm sorry, Evolving Hockey.
Yeah,
they do.
They check all that. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and he uses Cap Friendly, which Cap Friendly is another thing that I know that the Devils use. I got to ask you this, Sam. We talked about staying put. The Devils staying put. What's your thoughts? I think this should be your morning woo. Should the Devils stay put? But give us a preview. What do you think? Do you think the Devils should stay put? Like, if your choice was make a big move, and you have to understand that involves picks, prospects, players, all that risk, and the risk of paying that person, or stay put.
Well, to be honest with you, and I'll go back to the Timo Meier trade, I was content of, staying put even then. But the Timo Meier trade was made. There was something that the biggest concern of mine was, could you lock up Timo Meier for a long-term deal at the right price? Tom Fitzgerald pulled off in my mind, the impossible. All numbers were all over the place. 8 million, 10 million, 11 million. No, that's never going to work. Jack Hughes is 8 million. It was all over the place. But the fact of the matter is, Tom Fitzgerald did pull it off. He did not trade any core assets to make that deal go. So
that trade was just stupendous. I don't mean to cut you off, but that trade was stupendous.
Yeah, now hindsight's 20/20, but at the time, Dawson Mercer's name was thrown around, and that's where you got to go back in time. You can't play, Monday morning quarterback.
No, I mean, the Dawson Mercer thing was always insane, and I have it on record that it was insane. It was never happening. Yeah, they asked. Of course, they asked.
Yeah, but I'm talking.
I'm sure
about
they.
The fans.
I'm sure the first ask they probably made was Nico, and then they were like, "What?" And they're like, "Okay, let's get back down to earth." But you're still in the stratosphere when you ask for Dawson Mercer. It's just not happening. Yeah, they didn't even get Holtz.
Yeah, and to flip Muhammadulin, that was because for a lot of Devils fans, he was still the big mystery. Like, who is this guy?
Yeah,
who is this guy?
And honestly, do you know why it was really smart that they did that? Because there's nowhere to put Muhammadulin.
No,
Muhammadulin, like, there's nowhere to put him. You got I think Amanda Stein put out something about Topias Villano and Seamus Casey at Prospects Camp this week. And, you got those two, I know Casey was a second-round pick. I can't remember if Villano was a third or a fourth-round pick. You got those players, defensemen, looking like they can be NHLers sooner rather than later. You got, obviously, Luke Hughes and Nemitz coming into the league sooner rather than later. You got John Marino and Siegenthaler and Hamilton signed to long-term deals. You got this Kevin Ball deal, and he's, 24? You got all these players that are taking up spots. There's only 6 defenseman spots you can put every night. 7 if you're feeling froggy, but you really shouldn't. Really should do 6. And I think Mukhamadullin, however you say his name, sorry, I only have to say it every so often now, but I think there was no spot left for him. I think he was kind of out of room. And the Devils saw that.
And he didn't play in North America either. He didn't.
Yeah.
You didn't play full time in North America, and right now, and it was a smart move by Fitzgerald to move him. And what did you really give up for Muhammadullah was the whole Blake Coleman. Coleman wasn't going to stay. You weren't going to pay Coleman that money, and what turns out to be Timo Meier. I mean, he pulled the impossible, Tom Fitzgerald. He really did.
Well, I think you're going to really see the fruits of that Blake Coleman deal this year. I think Nolan Foot's going to be a fan favorite this year. Dude is just a firecracker. He's like, and I'm trying to, my brain is like, you have two paths you could go here now. And I'm going to go on the path that's probably negative, and I don't care. That Miles Wood contract is dog doo. Like, that is just, that was the dumbest contract I've seen this
Not
offseason.
our problem.
Signing Miles Wood to 6 years. 6. Dude is super replaceable. Replaceable is probably not the right word, because the problem is that he does just as much bad stuff as he does the good stuff, right? Independent. What is he making, like over $2 million a year for 6 years? Dumb. Colorado, you did dumb. Now the Devils are going to replace him with Nolan Foote. Nolan Foote is making this roster. Just get that in your mind. He's not fighting for a roster, but he's making the roster. He is not waiver eligible.
Kind of like Fabian
he is
Zetterlund?
waiver eligible.
Or is he?
Holtz? Are you talking about Holtz?
Oh, I thought you were talking about Nolan Foote.
I'm talking about Nolan Foote. What are you talking about? Wait, what do you mean Zetterlund?
Well, Zetterlund wasn't waiver eligible, right? Just like last year?
I believe he was not. But again, you have to make a decision that. Yeah. No, you're right. He was waiver. He was not waiver exempt. He had to go through waivers to get the AHL.
Yeah.
So the Devils kept him on the roster.
Yep.
The same thing is going to happen with Nolan Foote. But I think Nolan Foote's good. I think he's ready. I think he's not what we thought when the Devils got him in the Blake Coleman trade. They thought he was going to be a second or third line sniper. Doesn't work out that way. But here's the thing, Sam. You can absolutely put Nolan Foote on power play, and he's a fourth liner. And he can be a net front presence on that second line. His shot is still stupid good. He's got a great shot. These are the kinds of things that you have to just, assume. You assume Nolan Foote is going to make the roster. So that's why I say there's one spot. There is one spot open on this team, Sam. There's two if you count the goalie, but there's one spot open. It is third line right wing. And right now, I think even the Devils have Alexander Holtz penciled in there. Next to, it would be Haula.
Palat? Or does Palat play in the top six?
Palat, and then Holtz. Which, Sam, if that's your third line, that's pretty good. And then here's the thing is that I think Palat and Haula still have speed. Haula definitely has a ton of speed. But if that's your third line, the problem is that then Holtz has to play defense. Then you have to play defense every shift. Like, you have to be on top of it. You cannot make mistakes or you'll be pulled from the lineup. But, part of me thinks, Sam, maybe you put Mercer on that line. You do Palat, Haula, Mercer, and you put Holtz with either Hischier and Meier. I think you put Holtz with Hischier and Meier. You go all European line, Hischier, Meier, Holtz. And then you do Bratt, Toffoli, and Hughes. Am I missing anybody? I think it's the top 9, right? Then you got Nolan Foote, McLeod, as long as he's on the roster, and then Bastian, and then Lazar is your extra. There you go, right? Bada bing, bada boom.
There's really, right now, it has to be an unbelievable deal. It has to be an unbelievable deal for something to happen. And you know what? Tom Fitzgerald did everything before really pretty much everything before July 1st. He had his ducks in a row.
And listen, I'm sure he's put. I think everybody has heard. Everybody who hears anything has heard that he's put a light on Tarasenko. He's put a log on a couple other guys, but I don't think he wanted to give term. I'm surprised. The one guy that I thought they were going to get was Duchesne. Thought they were going to get Duchesne, but I don't think they offered the money. And he only got $3 million, but I don't think they offered even that. So, and who knows? Maybe Fitzgerald said Duchesne has to take 2 years, like 2 years, $4 million, like something like ridiculously low. And Duchesne was like, "Well, if I'm going to bet on myself with a $2 million contract, I'd rather take the 1 year." Which makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's all I got, Sam. It's
Wow.
plug time. Unless you got something.
No, development camp going on right now. Josh Philman's name has been all over social media as well.
Love to see that.
Yeah. But, the pipeline, a little bit of disruption during the draft because a couple picks were sent over to other teams via trade. But it's good to know that, some of these players will be the future New Jersey Devils players like the Seamus Casey, and is Ethan Edwards in camp as well? I believe he is.
Was he there? I don't remember. I've been kind of out of it, Sam.
Yeah.
To be honest, but I know Dan Rice is there. I know Trey Matthews is there.
Yeah.
2 Pucks and Pitchforks writers. So we're covered. Just sometimes the editor's got to take a nap, Sam.
Yeah. You got to take a nap. Anyway, we're up against the clock right now, so nothing to plug other than keep it here on the Let's Go Devils podcast and go to pucksandpitchforks.com for all the latest. How's our friend Vinny Parisi doing?
Man,
I haven't talked to him in a while.
Vinny's doing well. He's busy.
Oh, okay.
Vinny's busy. Maybe we'll have Vinny, since he's not doing the pregame, maybe we'll have Vinny on one of these.
Oh, yeah. Well, since I have you here, Shorts Guy and I have been planning our road trips. Our Vegas road trip, our Arizona road trip.
Isn't that the same road trip?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay. I was going to say. I was like,
we're going to Arizona. We got the Airbnb picked out. You're invited. We haven't talked logistics. And then I guess I'm going to have to rent a Suburban to go from Arizona to Vegas. It's a 4-hour trip, 5-hour trip. So
yeah, it's not terrible.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that part out. And then texted Sean Burke, so who knows? Maybe we're bringing the gear with us, so we're going to be doing live podcasts outside the arena. And also, I got to talk to you about,
are you bringing Are you trying to be the emergency goalie? Are you bringing the Brodeur gear?
Pretty much, yeah. I'm bringing the podcast gear in a hockey bag. Yeah. That's what's going to happen.
Okay. Yeah.
Then we got to talk about Tampa in January as well. That's on the list.
Yeah. And listen, thank you, schedule makers, for putting us in Tampa in January. Are you not making the right move? Oh, sorry, just smacked the mic there.
Hold on a sec. Your audio's off. Did you kill the diaphragm?
Did I really?
I don't know. We'll figure it out.
It's over. Just let me do plugs real quick.
Yep.
Pucksandpitchforks.com. I just wrote a piece about how the DeBrincat trade and how the DeBrincat trade and the new contract shows how excited we should be about the Bratt contract. Everything kind of worked out in our favor. We have a bunch of going on at pucksandpitchforks.com right now. Jersey Joe just wrote a piece about where he thinks the Devils will end up, and he basically just went through the Metropolitan Division and said where he thinks each team's going to rank at the end of the year. Steven talked about the Devils' defense, kind of how it's going to go moving forward. I know Ethan Fink is writing a piece about why the Devils are going to be Stanley Cup contenders, so he's kind of putting the finishing touches on that, so that should be up soon. I'm going to be working on a couple pieces. Sam, I've promised a lot of pieces. I'm not going to promise anymore. But I do have one in the can about how the Devils' salary cap situation is going to look moving forward. It's interesting. It's interesting. It's more interesting than I thought it was. I thought they might have a little bit more flexibility than I thought they did, and they don't. But it's a price of doing business with superstars.
Wow. All righty. Well, we're gonna get out of here, and I'll talk to you off air about our trips, because I know some of our fans are gonna be following us very soon.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, just gonna hit the music. Gonna get out of here. Not sure if there's gonna be a morning woo.
Oh, I even gave you a topic.
Yeah, I know, but it's scheduling conflicts. It's going to be a very early morning woo. If Anyway, now they're joking around on the YouTube live. You people are funny. All right, anyway. We'll see you later. Till next time, let's go Devils.